In March of 1996, the world was introduced to Raccoon City in the hit game Resident Evil. What seemed like a run-of-the-mill zombie survival horror game would turn into one of the biggest horror franchises in the world, with 11 sequel games, 12 movies, and 2 TV shows. However, it wasn't until 2019 when the series reached its true potential with the remake of 1998's Resident Evil 2. The game features 2 protagonists, Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy, with both characters having their own separate but similar stories. While the game doesn't necessarily tell you who to play, most players will opt to start with Leon, but what many players, including myself, felt after finishing Leon's story was confusion. So the question is, should new players play as Claire or Leon? I'm going to make the case for both sides by looking at both gameplay and narrative elements and end the debate once and for all. Let's start with Claire. Claire enters Raccoon City in hopes of finding her missing brother Chris. However, instead of finding him, she runs into a young girl in the sewers named Sherry. She is left with no choice but to go deeper underground in order to find Sherry's parents and get them all to safety. Leon's story is a bit different. He's a rookie police officer headed to his first day of work at the RPD when the outbreak hits. From the start of the game up until the first boss fight, the 2 stories are more or less the same, but with 2 small and very important differences. This ladder and this mirror. If you're playing as Leon, he foolishly breaks this ladder on the way down. However, when playing as Claire, the ladder is there, it's just fine. It's a similar situation with the mirror. When playing as Leon, the mirror is shattered, allowing access to the other side of the room. However, as Claire, the mirror is perfectly fine when you enter the room, but is most certainly broken by the time you leave. That's all the evidence I need to conclusively say the events of Claire's story take place before Leon's. But does that mean the player is meant to experience Claire's story first? As stated earlier, Claire encounters young Sherry, and after a series of unfortunate events is able to track down her mother Annette, who is a head researcher for the Umbrella Corporation, the company responsible for the outbreak. All of these things would be unknown to the player if they decided to play as Leon first, as his playthrough is more of a mystery or investigative thriller, trying to discover the source of the outbreak. So we've determined not only that the events of Claire's story take place first, but that she is clearly much more involved in the central parts of Resident Evil 2's story. It should be clear that Claire is the main character, and that the player should start with her and end with Leon. But it's not that simple. Remember how I said Leon's story is more of a mystery? That's a very important detail here. Many of the things Leon is trying to uncover are shown in Claire's story. Starting with Claire would remove the weight of these mysteries, as the player would already know the answers, making Leon's playthrough far less satisfying. Resident Evil 2 is not a game with 2 different stories, but it's one story that you can only fully experience by playing as both characters. I'm not going to tell somebody how to play a game. And truly, you could start with either Leon or Claire and still have a great time, as there's going to be inconsistencies either way. After all, it's a zombie game. The story isn't what you play it for. It's about the tension, fear, and the feeling of overcoming the odds even though you never feel fully prepared for the monsters you have to face.